Hello, and welcome along to this short video where I wanted to go over the new features and functions that have been added to the 0.3.0 release of the Cake extension for Visual Studio. So let's go ahead and jump in. You can find it in the usual place in the Visual Studio Marketplace. So you can either click download here, which will download the V6 and you can add it into your running instance. Or if you go to Visual Studio and you open up extensions and manage extensions, you would be able to find it in here. So we could just search in here for Cake. And from there, you would be able to find this and just ensure it's the 0.3.0 release of that, and you would go ahead and install it as you normally do. Now, the first thing I wanted to point out is that in this release, we have added support for Visual Studio 2019. So this is me in Visual Studio 2019. I have the extension installed, and it's fully functioning in the way that you would expect it to. Now, the one thing that is different from previous versions of this extension is that we now have drop support for 2015. Bottom line is we only have so many hours in the day that we can contribute to open source. So we have opted to add in support for 2019, but we've removed the support for 2015. That's really the crux of it. So if you do need Visual Studio 2015 support, then continue using the old version. Don't upgrade to the new one, is what it basically comes down to. So in this release, it was really about getting that 2019 support, but we have added in a couple of other things. The first one that I wanted to talk about is that we have now added support for the .NET Global tool version of Cake. So when you come down here into the Task Runner Explorer, which is kind of just below my head, let's maybe move this out a little bit so that we can see it. So in the Task Runner Explorer, when you double click on a task that's been found, what you will find is by default, it will start running the .NET Global tool version of Cake. Now that does need to be installed globally. So there's really two options of running the Task Runner Explorer with Cake in Visual Studio. The first is to have the .NET tool installed globally, or you can have Cake installed using the Chocolate packages. Now, that's very much the same as the Visual Studio Code support for Cake. So really, part of this release is about bringing the feature parity between the Visual Studio extension and the Visual Studio Code extension into line. So Visual Studio Code supports both the .NET tool installed globally and Cake installed with the Chocolate package. So the Visual Studio extension now does the exact same thing. So if you have both installed, it will attempt to use the .NET tool version before the Cake exe installed by the Chocolate package. Okay, so that's what's happening there. So it works exactly the same as it was before, based on the .NET Cake files that you have installed in your added to your solution. The Task Runner Explorer will find them, and you will be able to double-click and execute on one of the tasks that's been identified. There are obviously the options of running debug, verbose, or dry run options as they were before as well. Like I say, nothing's changed in that regard. One thing that has changed, and you can kind of see it here, is that within the execution of Cake, we have started to standardize on the double dash arguments that are passed into Cake rather than the single dash arguments. So we are phasing those out as we head towards the 1.0 release of Cake. So the Cake extension here has been standardized to use the double dash arguments. And that, I think, that's kind of the crux of this release. There's a few other small things, so definitely go ahead and check out the release notes if you want to see everything that's included. But the main crux of this release was finally, and apologies for not getting out sooner, but it was all about getting the support for Visual Studio 2019, as well as starting to standardize what we ship in the Visual Studio Code extension, along with what's in the Visual Studio extension. Now, there are still some differences. Some things are just easier to do in Visual Studio Code compared to Visual Studio, but we will hopefully get to them. I am starting to work on the next release, which you'll see on the repository here. If you go into the issues, and you look for the 040 milestone, you will see what we're planning for that release. So definitely keep an eye out there if you're interested in any of that. If you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to me on my Twitter handle, which is there, or specifically for this project, feel free to raise an issue, or if you've got an issue and you happen to have a fix, create a pull request, even better. But for now, that's all I wanted to highlight. So hopefully this is going to be of use to you. If not, tell us why not. If it is, we'd still love to hear from you anyway. So that's it from now. Thank you very much.